Today is Valentine's Day, Tuesday, February 14th, if you didn't already know. And I'm going to go ahead and read the legal notice. I want to welcome you to the Fair Board meeting. I am Sherry Weiner, the chair. And as information for our audience, if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metro Board of Fair Commissioners today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the board's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact your own independent legal counsel. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for an approval of the minutes from the previous meeting.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the meetings of the prior meeting as received.
Thank you, Commissioner Hendricks. And I need a second, please.
Well, I'm the only option, so yes, I'll second that.
You are the only option, but I will give you time to read them.
It's fine. I read them before the meeting, and I will vote yes to approve them.
When I call for the vote.
All right, go ahead.
Is there any discussion, corrections, or additions to the minutes, please? Taking that as a no, all in favor, Commissioner Hartley.
Favor, aye.
Commissioner Hendricks. And I am an aye, so the motion passes and the minutes are approved. We will now move to public comment time, and I need the list.
Commissioner Weiner, while you get that, are these minutes posted on the Fair Board website, or where are they held?
So all of the board packet materials are posted on the Fair Board meeting website.
Okay, only because I know who this is. You know what you put in place of your name?
No.
Outer Pit, Fair Park 2.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, Mr. Smiley, the floor is yours.
My name is
You have
Shane.
2 minutes.
Thanks so much. My name is Shane Smiley, Brush Hill Road, Nashville. Before you have a packet that has 3 photographs of the Speedway. One is what was presented after the October 2017 special meeting over Fair Park. The second one is Fair Park as it was originally proposed and approved July 13th of 2017. And the third is the rendering we have from SMI. What you're going to notice is that that back pit is no longer there. If you go to the paperwork that's of the minutes of that special meeting of October 5th and flip over to the back side, you'll see highlighted where Director Slesser, now Director Womack, pointed out that the pit with the tunnel access for the racetrack would remain. And if you go to the other packet, which is from Metro Government, go to the second page, it says the variance for Fair Park. This variance will expire on July 6, 2018. The variance is valid only so long as the plan presented to Stormwater Committee does not change. And then they repeated, the variance is valid only so long as the plan presented to Stormwater Management Committee does not change. Well, obviously from the maps, you can see that this facility has changed greatly since that time frame. So I would argue that the variance for Fair Park Phase 2 is null and void. We were promised as a race community in 2017 when the argument over Fair Park and the argument over this very facility was taking place that the back pit and the tunnel were safe and would remain. We over years have had events that have dropped down in the number of events, the number of testing dates. We're down to a bare minimum. Any reduction in parking, any reduction in the ability to put cars on the facility is only going to serve to continue to harm local racing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.
And next up, I'm so sorry, I cannot read it. Last name is Byrne.
It's Killian.
Okay, great. Come on up and share with us.
So I wrote a few things down. Obviously, my name's Killian. I live in the Berry Hill area. I just wanted to speak to you guys today to voice my support to the renovations of the Speedway at the Fairgrounds. I believe the additional parking will be a huge help to everyone who lives in my neighborhood and will help cut down on all the street parking. I honestly do not see any cons to this development and think it will be bringing nothing but good to our community. I also currently have been impacted by the sound in the past, and I'm excited for a decrease in that. I'm happy with the promises of sound reduction and know there will be a positive impact for everyone who lives in the area. I hope that you vote to approve this agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrea?
Hi, I'm just here to ask, first I have a question. Have any of you been out here in somebody's house during race day for a site visit?
This is an opportunity for you to share with
Okay.
us.
Okay, I just wanted to I tried to contact all of you on phone, but for a few days, nobody answers their phone. But I was told that nobody really on the staff has been here on race day visiting somebody's home. It's one thing to visit race day when you're a racer with earplugs and you're involved in racing, but it's one thing to just try to live your life in the neighborhood. I just want to remind you guys of that it's so important for a site visit before you make such an important decision on our neighborhood and surrounding area. I'm not opposed to racing. I like racing, but when I lived in Sonoma, it was 30 miles out. The other thing I want to put the bug in your ear is that you have to remember we have a racetrack out in Lebanon. All the racers that come up here and say they love racing and they want to see it happen, well, they have a racetrack. So I don't think we should just be trying to accommodate a few racers that have a hobby. It's not fair for the thousands that live around here. There's a racetrack. It's going to be competition monetarily. You have to remember that I feel like we're trying to fulfill Jerry Caldwell's dream of having his hands in Nashville because he wasn't able to get his hands over in Lebanon, but there is NASCAR there. Y'all are aware of that. So that's pretty much what I want to say is that just it's such an important decision. Don't look at just the monetary thing. It's Nashville. Maybe Anthony's not here because of traffic, because there's such poor planning these days. So this is really huge and really important. I really suggest that you guys come out on race day and visit somebody's home with kids. A lot of my neighbors aren't here today because they have kids. It's 4 o'clock and they're still at work. So some of these meetings aren't a good representation of our people and how we feel. So I hope you'll take all that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Hi, my name is Jeff. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my opposition to the proposal. I too am against the proposal. I feel in addition to being a bad business proposal, which has tons of holes and puts Nashville in a very compromised position if you read the details, I think that it's an inappropriate impact on the community. It really brings the community in the wrong direction. I think that there are developments that could be done that would enhance the community and bring this up to a level that was representative of Nashville that's moving forward, as opposed to taking it into a very different direction. Anyway, I think that it'd be great if somebody could just evaluate at least one counter proposal as opposed to being held hostage to the only thing on the table, which it sounds like is the case, because the business proposal is really, really weak. And again, there's a lot of compromises that could put Nashville in a very compromised position. Thanks for taking the time to listen.
Thank you for your time. Heidi?
I timed it. Heidi from Woodwood, Houston, with love in my heart for my neighborhood. My little cottage that I bought 20 years ago with my husband, for the neighbors who have lived there for 40 years that I have gotten to know, for the new ones that have moved in to purchase homes, even with the uncertainty about the racetrack and how that might affect property value and quality of life. I love the passion that race fans have for this track, and I loved hearing that there might be electric NASCAR races coming in the future. Unfortunately, like other aspects of this proposal, it's an exaggeration. I read about it. The president of NASCAR confirms that while they may have a hybridized exhibition race and a series down the road, that NASCAR will never go all electric. So love lost. Like the chocolates my husband gave me this morning, NASCAR fans are also disappearing, down from 8.4 million viewers to 3 million per race. The NASCAR president said last year that they have lost their way and they are trying to generate new fans. We should not be considering a 30-year commitment with something that has a represented decline. I know the declination of this lease would mean a lot of work for all of you because the track needs help. But what happens if you approve it? When a 10 multi-day race weekend, 20 other track rentals, and 40 new events for BMS and CVC fall short. When two huge 30,000-seat stadiums, feet apart from one another, can't repay the city that they owe. What happens in 10 years? I'll be 60. How old will all of you be? I'll tell you, neighbors and taxpayers will bear the brunt of this decision today for generations. Say no to the proposal. Find another option. Use funds available right now to update the Speedway, but welcome other events for the community that aren't all centered around auto sports and events. And one more point. Race fans do already have this track, pop-up Formula One style races, and NASCAR 36 miles away. Telling families to stop complaining or move away so someone else can enjoy a few nights out a few times a year, where's the love in that? Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Shay?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the chance to speak for a second. I'm just going to update you on where things stand. I know last time I provided our opposition letter from SNAP for the Wedgewood Houston community. Since then, we've had one other neighborhood join with us in that, so we're up to 4. And honestly, interest is growing as people are learning more and more about this. I wanted to share that. We did have a community meeting since last time I was here, so I want to thank the racing group for coming out and speaking to us and listening. It was instantly apparent where the community stood on this topic, and that was opposed. There was various concerns, a large number that was communicated. We haven't heard back really from the racing group on those, so we're still waiting on that and would like to continue that conversation. At best, I would say people in the community are indifferent. Most are opposed, and they just want to hear more. The people are indifferent, and like I said, I think it's trending in the wrong direction from this proposal just based on what I'm hearing. So I just want you to know the concerns are very real. Thank you to the members here who have spoken with me and continue to have an open dialogue and talk about these items. We provided a list to the board, and we hope you take them seriously as this process continues.
Thank you, Shay. Kenny?
Hello, my name's Kenny Vidito. I'm a lifelong Davidson County resident, and I'm for the racetrack. I do feel for the folks that live around here, and I would hope that the SMI proposal in Bristol would bring something that would offer them a better chance for noise reduction than keeping it just local racing would in the future. I want to thank this Fair Board for all your hard work and preserving and saving this local racetrack, the second oldest racetrack in the United States. And my family has raced here since 1960. So I'm a fan, but I'm also a competitor. And today I wanted to talk to you, if I could, about a couple of interests that I have. The first one being the parking, the rear parking for the pits. For local racers, if that parking is removed, there's really, where are we going to park? How are we going to run our programs? You know, I just want, as you go forward planning this, that you hopefully think about a good spot for local racing to pit, and not that works for us. That's not a mile away, you know. And so that back pit has always worked great for us. I would hate to see us lose that, and so I would hope you could enter that in your ideas for future planning. The second thing is in event numbers. For local racers, we have to get sponsorships, and I would like to think that we could get 10 local events. That would be ideal for us, you know, as you're putting a program together for sponsors and saying that you're racing 10 times at Nashville Fairgrounds. That goes a long way, but we would hope at a bare minimum that we could preserve 7 events moving forward. Just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Okay, the public comment time is now closed, and we will move to monthly reports. And I'll call on Satrice for a financial update, please.
Hello, everyone. The financial information presented today is preliminary, and all revenue and expenses for January 2023 may not have been recorded to the ledgers as of February 13th, 2023, when this report was created. The preliminary actuals through January 2023 are as follows. Revenue is approximately $2.1 million. Expenditures are around $2.7 million, resulting in a net loss of approximately $594,700. Depreciation expense is $794,324, so the total net loss is roughly $1.3 million. Below you will find an itemized list of our revenues and expenses. Our top 3 revenue sources are as follows: flea market, corporate sales events, and the divisional fair. Flea market revenue is roughly $481,316, which represents 22% of our total revenue. Corporate sales events is around $858,000, which represents 40% of our total revenue. And the divisional fare is $541,181, which represents 25% of our total revenue. Our top 3 expenses are payroll, utilities, and purchased services. Payroll expense is approximately $936,879, which represents 34%. Utilities expense is $262,266, which is 10%. Purchase services expense is $713,975, which represents 26% of our total expenses. For the month of February, our revenue projection is approximately $133,108. We anticipate 28% of that coming from flea market revenue and 72% coming from corporate sales events. On our agent report, we have approximately $4,886 in outstanding invoices. This concludes our financial report. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, any questions for Satrice? Commissioner Hartley?
Satrice, thank you as always. I think I understand this to be the same as our last meeting, but essentially we still are on track to finish our year where we expected, which is 4.6, about 4.6 in expenses and about 4.6 in revenue, including a $2 million subsidy from Metro. Is that still where we're sort of projected to land?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, I think that it's the upshot of what we always need to be thinking about. And I know Laura's going to talk to us about some great ideas about fees later, but I mean, we're still operating $2 million at a loss, which is, 40, we're making 60 cents on the dollar. So we need to really just think about ways to close that. And I know you've got some good ideas, Laura, so or Director Womack, so I'd like to continue to stress that closing that gap is something we need to figure out.
Any other commissioners with comments? Seeing none, we'll move to the event update. Director?
Okay. So you have in your packets a February and March draft event calendar. What we've attempted to do in reaching out to our campus partners, per Commissioner Hartley's request, we have some road closures on there as we enter into soccer season, so you'll see those. There's also a temporary one, and I will update this for the community as well as we move forward, that if there are any lane restrictions on Wedgwood, sometimes with larger events, we may have to get semis towards Expo 3 to load. Like for instance, we had for a short time parking to unload hot tubs for this weekend because we had a big hot tub show at the fairgrounds that needed to load in on Expo 3. So we will add those on there, and then certainly we can update NIAC when we meet in our monthly meetings to get the word out to the community about road closures, but you'll see that Craighead Street from Bransford to Nolensville, Wedgwood from Rains to Craighead, Bransford from Wedgwood to the intersection of Craighead and Benton Avenue from Bransford to Wedgwood will all have some sort of closure as it relates to ingress and egress for soccer games.
Any questions for Director Womack?
Director Womack, thank you for this. So I think I understand in February, the 19th and 25th, and then March, the 11th and 25th, as well as the 30th and April 1st, those are the only days the community should expect road closures on the campus. Is that right?
For right now, yes. The only thing I am checking on is potentially for lawn and garden on that Saturday, the 4th. And then I'll be updating and having a discussion with our parking manager this week we've got a meeting with the event promoter on Thursday. I think that'll give us a little bit better idea of whether or not we need to do a partial road closure, but it's more of a regulated, not a full closure, because we still allow through traffic. It just slows people down a little bit because we have pedestrians moving back and forth from the lot to the expo building. So we usually post an officer if we expect a large pedestrian or customer count for a certain event weekend.
One more question?
I appreciate that. I just wanted to say, obviously, the road closures are within our rights. I mean, we can get the permits from the city. I think my main concern, and I would ask our NIAC members that are in the audience, is just to communicate that just for planning purposes for the community. I think, again, I think you're on track with what you're doing with road closures. We just want to communicate it.
I would just like to add, could the times be included on those road closures? So if it's going to be closed 9 to 3, would that be included?
I can, yep.
And just to clarify on that, when we say Craighead from Bransford to Nolensville, are we saying that Craighead will be shut down both directions or just limited?
My understanding, and I don't think anybody's here from soccer. I'll clarify that with soccer, but my understanding, it would be partial, more of a lane closure than a full road closure.
Yeah, and I think that's where it
It's
would
just
be
to
helpful.
facilitate ingress and egress.
Because I'm assuming that, that's a pretty hard pill to swallow to say that Craighead is going to be, all of Craighead will be closed as a
Correct.
main thoroughfare. So I think that might be helpful when we do this, like maybe, partial, because I think that'll help. It's just like we know that it might be busier and if we know times, but at least that, right? So when we say road closures March 11th and 25th, like partial Craighead Street, Bransford to Nolensville, partial closure or lane reduction, I think that's enough. I think what'll freak people out is to say, oh my God, Craighead's going to be closed all day.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes it easier for us too, so that we could diffuse some of that fear, letting them know that it's going to be.
No, that's a good point, because also that is a big rideshare location for the games, which that was one of the reasons why for that lane closure. But I'll clarify that and put that out there.
Thank you.
I had a question too. So I'm looking at March 11th and the 25th, and there seems to be a soccer game plus other activities. Do we have a sort of parking and transportation plan? Like how do you because I'm assuming 20,000 plus people for soccer and then a couple more thousand people for the flea market. What does that parking look like?
So we have designated areas. So we've met and talked about those weekends where we have events. Usually our events end around 4 or 5, depending on the event, and the game starts at 7:30. So there is a transition there. Generally, they open lots 4 hours ahead of time, and our events have a tendency to lighten up as you get toward closing time. So we work together to kind of adjust, to coordinate when lots are open to make sure that our events are able to happen and have enough parking, and then we just split the lots and designate certain parking. We'll have electronic signage to direct people to the appropriate lots, as well as staff to help direct traffic.
Thank you so much. That was really good input, and I think that'll be helpful for the community. We're going to move to Executive Director's report, and I will turn the floor back over to Director Womack.
All right. Well, I wanted to cover one thing. In your packets, kind of toward the end, you're going to see this sheet. This is, nope, single sheet. It says flea market data comparison. Thought this was kind of fun because we have been talking a lot about our rebound. I think everybody realizes the hit that the flea market took once we reopened from the pandemic. And it was very encouraging. We knew we had started our rebound, but we really wanted to quantify that for you. And you had asked some questions a while back to see these numbers. So we did a data comparison the same point in time. So July is our first month of our fiscal year for those of you in the audience. So it would be July to January. Actuals from July of 2021 to January of 2022 compared with last July to this January last month. So as you can see that we've had a remarkable improvement from total revenue, and things that are included in the flea market revenue is booth rent, equipment rental like tables and chairs, parking, and food and beverage commission. And the highest was in August of this past year. We increased our total revenue by 277%. This past January, we increased it by 250%. Our number of rented booths has gone up dramatically as well. This past January, this last month, we increased our booth rental by 233% over this time last year. Our number of dealers has increased significantly as well. Just pulling the number from this past January compared to last January, we've increased the number of dealers by 210%. And it's really encouraging that since August of 2022, we've seen and recruited 308 new dealers, which is fantastic. So, that is a big number, but we're working really hard for retention as well. So one of the things that we have been doing, I'm due for another one, but we sent out a survey to our flea market vendors just to ask what their plans were for retention purposes and are they planning on coming back. And we had a really high percentage of those who responded indicated that they certainly would come back and keep coming to the market. So we're doing, the numbers certainly have proved that, we're on that upward trend, we're rebounding. There's still a lot of work to do because we're still behind, compared to our 18 and 19 numbers, but we're definitely in the midst of a good rebound.
Commissioners have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner
Of
Hendricks.
the vendors that we have and of this data, how much of that can be attributed to the vendor rent relief program? How many of these people have received free rent?
So of the 308, not all of them have applied for rent relief. So we pulled that. We didn't do that comparison yet of how many new vendors applied for rent relief. We know it's not 100%, but it's a really high percentage. So I do think it absolutely played a role in it. When we do our next survey, I think that is something we're going to try to capture in addition to the questions that we've already asked and presented to you. I believe we presented that to you a couple months ago when we surveyed the flea market vendors regarding the rent relief. I think it might, a good question to add would be, why did you decide to join the flea market? And then we can get a good idea, was it the rent relief or was it something else? And let them identify that reason.
Okay, but of the totals that we have here, do we know how much of that came from this pot of money and where we stand right now with the rent relief? Like out of the $1 million that we started off, where how much has been spent yet?
Yes, we just calculated that. So if I recall, it was approximately 360,000 if we continue at the pace that we're going now for the duration of the program. So it's almost 40% of what we were awarded. And we are, I'll put it this way, we are pursuing all opportunities to expand that program. So stay tuned.
Commissioner Avila?
Yeah, so thank you, Director Womack. This is really helpful. I think one of the other items, I'm assuming if we look at our overall revenue for this fiscal year, that this Food and Beverage Commission, if we were to just look at every month, we're looking at about 7 to 8% of this total revenue can be attributed to food and beverage. I'm sure that it goes up and down, but we're talking about a 7-8% contribution to the overall revenue on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, it averages, so on a big month, we're seeing 6,000 to 8,000. And for our non-peak, we're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 per month of commission.
So, yeah, at the high end, 7 to 8%
Yeah.
of the month's revenue. Okay.
Yeah.
And when is that contract up again?
Spring of 2024, March of 2024. So
Okay.
we're going to be starting to work on an RFP now.
Okay.
Give us a
Great.
year to put one out and
Great.
get new bids.
Thank you.
Commissioner Owens?
My question is, when did we send the survey out?
So we sent it out approximately 3 months after we implemented the ARP, and we're due for another one. So we'll be sending that next one out probably in advance of the February market. So one of the commitments that we made was to do it quarterly.
Okay, and this follow-up question is, for November, December, and January, the numbers of dealers are basically the same. Is there a reason why it was a drop of like over 50 from October?
October and April are traditionally our largest markets, so you'll always see really large peaks at those 2 times of year. And actually, I'm really encouraged by the winter months because it does have a tendency to fall off because of the cold weather. So sometimes that will impact our outside vendor numbers because it's cold and unpredictable, and a lot of vendors will just take off during the winter months. So I'm really encouraged, actually, that it was actually as steady as it
Yeah,
was
it
compared
seems
to
pretty steady for those 3
Mhm.
months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have anything else? Oh, Commissioner Hartley.
I think this is great, Director Womack. It's really, really good progress. I think I support all the commissioners' requests for additional data here. I think this is a really good report that we should look at over time and get that survey out. We might also add columns showing our pre-COVID numbers, just to know what the target we're kind of shooting for is. And I think that's really important to remember, like, this is a multi-use campus that's supposed to benefit the historical uses of the fairgrounds and the community. And I think this is a great example of you achieving that. So I just really appreciate this work. Let's get the data, keep building on it. You're not done yet, but I think you're in the right direction.
How far back? Just 18, 19, or
Yeah, probably
17, 16?
maybe one or 2 years before COVID, probably.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly add that. And, as always, this is a team effort. We've got some really motivated, just really dynamite new staff that if you follow our social media, it has picked up. We're up to 70,000 followers, and that has increased dramatically recently. So I give a lot of credit. I give all the credit to the staff for, their diligence, their cold calling, they're going through old files and calling, dealers who haven't been there for a while. Just really customer service facing, effort on their part with the vendors. I just ran into at the office today. There was a gentleman that came in and he's like, I want to come back, and he hadn't been here since 2019. So he's from Massachusetts. So it's so great to have him back, and he's really excited. So we're going to see that more and more. But again, retention is the key. It's one thing getting them in the door, but can we get them to come back month after month? And that'll be the test.
And just as a reminder, our program runs through the rent relief program.
Right now, August of 2023 would be the last, or no, sorry, July.
July. Last
So it'd be,
fiscal year.
yeah, July
Okay.
of 2023, because we started it in August.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to say that this month we're opening Expo 3. We have half the building. We've got about 18 booths indoors that are currently available out of 280 some. And then by next month, we'll have all 3 buildings fully opened and rented.
And I'm sorry, I have one last question.
Commissioner Hendricks, you're free to speak.
Yeah. So I just had a question about about the process to vet some of the vendors and what they're able to sell. I came to the last flea market, just walked around, and I noticed some things that probably shouldn't be sold because it probably would be illegal to sell. And it's just a couple of other things that concerned me of, paraphernalia that could be offensive to people.
So in our rules that each flea market vendor has to read and accept prior to becoming a vendor, we do have several that outline what prohibited merchandise. Certainly anything that is illegal should not be there. Certain, expired medications, food, culturally insensitive, pornographic, those types of items. We kind of walk a fine line a little bit on what's considered offensive because we are a government facility. And so we, if it causes or has a potential to cause a disturbance, which is how our rules are written, then we will go and address it with the vendor directly, which we have done and had them remove certain pieces of merchandise. Our staff is responsible for walking around and doing those checks. So certainly if anybody sees anything that is violates any of those rules, certainly let us know and we'll go address it with the vendor directly.
Okay, thank you.
Director Womack, could we get, just circulate a copy of those event policies? That might be good for us all to look at.
Sure thing. It's also on our website under the flea market heading, and I'll send you the link.
Any other questions, comments? We will move on. We are at the old business now, Fairgrounds Improvement Project, and I will call Mr. Henley.
Great. Can everyone hear me? Wonderful. Good afternoon, board, staff, council. First, happy Valentine's Day to you all. Really appreciate being able to come up here in front of you and got a lot of love to share today. So you'll hear from me a little bit more. I'm representing not only Pillars as I usually do, but also the GHP team. Have both Ron and Katie Sheesley, who are usually one of the other or both here with me, are both traveling. So just wanted to let you know that they're here in spirit. But also you're going to hear a little bit more from me because I'm going to carry on some of the tasks and responsibilities they have for sharing some updates on the project. And then also in your packets, this will be your first time seeing a new draft document for a dashboard page related to infrastructure part 2. But I'll get to that. Just wanted to kind of set the tone for my presentation this afternoon. First and foremost, as I like to typically say to you all, the numbers and the figures that I'll be presenting are about 30 to 45 days in arrear. And so, if you were to walk out on site or you see some activities that are happening, These numbers may not reflect those up to the moment, so give us about 30, 45 days to catch up with that. But I will be talking about some of the current things that are happening out there today. I'll start with the Fairgrounds improvement project, so the blue dashboard, as I usually do. Again, you see us walking as fine of a line as we can, right around 99 to 100% complete there. Just want to give a lot of commendations to the Fairgrounds staff. When you get to this part of the budget and you're doing FF&E, just the dollars are small. You're doing a lot of cleanup. You're doing a lot of reconciling of things, and so a lot of time is spent on not as many zeros and digits on some of the invoices, but we're doing a really good job keeping things tight there and staying within our budget. So really happy to report that. One of the areas in that budget that has some funding that's remaining is related to the multi-purpose or the maintenance facility. We are working to close that out. Final bills and retainage, kind of the only thing that's really left there. And so you will see the funds that are there. We'll be coming back to you in the future talking about where those funds are allocated. But we've done a really good job of staying within the budget for that project. So happy to report that. And then as you look towards the kind of the full sheet toward the bottom line, about $450,000 left associated with projects on the blue dashboard sheet. So again, that 99%, we've kind of been hovering there for a while, but there's been some movement there. Activity is happening, just smaller spend in that category. Any questions about that one before I move on?
Commissioner Hartley.
Yeah, I look at this every month and I never ask this question, but since there's so much interest from the community about the Bristol proposal, could you actually give us a little overview of what the grandstands and speedway, we have about, looks like we've got $200K left there. What would that go to?
So that allocation was made, those funds were allocated to that area when we were contemplating work that needed to be done for the speedway related to power infrastructure needs to support racing. Those funds have actually been allocated from 4% funds. And so the work is being done. We are managing that. And so that bucket of funding is essentially to cover costs that may exceed that. As we open up things, you always find something new. So it's being reserved there. But we hopefully a large portion of that will remain once that work is complete there.
Any other questions? Mr. Henley, you may continue.
Thank you very much. The second page dashboard, again, you're very familiar with Fair Park Phase 1, Phase 2. Again, not a lot of movement for Phase 1 funds that are sitting there. Again, want to make sure we're presenting those regularly to keep you informed, but not much activity within that funding bucket. But on Phase 2, we did have some substantial costs as proportionate cost, substantial costs related to the design. Our design team's been working really hard, working to get final documents, specifications to our contractor so that they can price those. So they'll be pushing send on those documents later this month to get to our contractor for pricing. Really looking at getting a lot more activity started on that end of the campus. And so great milestones coming up for us here later this month as we kind of clear that hurdle. And so again, when I come back and you'll start to see some construction there, first month or two I report, you probably won't see dollars moving in that line item. But again, work is happening there. So just wanted to highlight that and excited to be approaching that milestone. Questions on?
Any questions? Commissioner Hartley.
Thank you. This is more for you, Sherry, and for Director Womack. I mean, most of us are new to the board, and I'm not super familiar with Fair Park Phase 2. Could we get and I know y'all have said some stuff. I just want to get a better grasp of kind of what we can expect to have happen on those parts of the campus. Because I know the general gist of what's going to happen, but I would love to see like a timeline or kind of the general features that are going to be there so I can, kind of share that with the community.
Commissioner Hendricks, did you have a question? Okay. Director.
We'll put that together.
Yeah, Absolutely. And again, perfect question, really good timing. What we'll be able to come back to you within, likely by next month or early the following month, will be kind of the imagery, again, because the designs will be completed, and then our contractor will have had a chance to look at scheduling. So it will kind of those two things marrying up there. So
I believe that there is a timeline available that was provided to Councilman Sledge. And I think that it'll be pretty easy for us to just grab that and give it to you.
All positive. I mean, this is great. This is really good. So thank you.
And you'll also notice within Phase 2 that's happening now, if you drive by down Nolensville Pike, there's some construction happening, and that is the new MTA bus station that's going in.
And sidewalk, right? A lot of sidewalk work.
In relation to the bus station, yes, we anticipate the sidewalks that NDOT is going to do from Nolensville down Craighead. Hopefully it'll kick off next month.
Yep.
Any other questions at this point?
I know you're not asking for design feedback, but if we could not have the chain link razor wire fence, I would prefer to move to the nicer bar iron fence. But that's, I'll leave that in your hands.
Yeah. I feel like if that's still there going forward, I might not be as welcome as I've been the past few years. So I understand that.
For the record, I just want to say that it sounds like Commissioner Caleb Hemmer is in the room. So, yes, you can take it.
Spirit lives on.
Yeah, spirit lives on.
Indeed. Yeah. I thought it. I don't know if there are other questions related to Fairgrounds.
There are not. You may move on to part 3.
So the surprise gift that you all are receiving for Valentine's Day for me is a new dashboard. That dashboard is representative of allocations that were made to the Fairgrounds related to infrastructure part 2. And those dollars have been allocated for a while now, but we've reached a point where we need to present those to you because the activity associated with those funds has begun. The Fair Board has entered into a participation agreement, and that participation agreement, some of that work that is in there has started. And as of Monday, so yesterday, Katie Sheasley of GHP and myself were out on site, walking around with a few folks from Market Street and a few folks from RC Matthews, kind of looking at the progress of the work. And so we have received in review our first invoices related to that work. We've yet to formally approve that. We've yet to submit those to the Fair Board. And so there's no dollars, again, present for that work. But we are monitoring that work. We are actively providing our supervision services for that. I'm excited for that work to be underway. If you go out there today, everything that we looked at is pretty much buried. It's been, it's a lot of utility work. That's kind of as far as they've gotten. But in the coming months, you'll start to see that presented here on the dashboard. And of course, you'll be hearing reporting from us about the progress of that work.
Commissioner Hartley, do you have any questions? Director.
The only thing I will add is at some point, hopefully Ed will present us with a 4th dashboard. So we have 19.3 million going through council right now for this fiscal year's capital spending plan for additional infrastructure. So part of this money is because of the just really impressive inflation that everyone has been experiencing. In construction, when we did the original estimates, we were looking at about a 40% price increase on various goods and services related to construction. That is starting to come down, which is great, but some of the projects that we have earmarked for funding is to redesign the roadway from the concourse down to Craighead to make that wider, more accessible two-way traffic, to take that bridge that is currently over Browns Creek, which is now one single lane, make that a two-way bridge, as well as adding a pedestrian crossing over Browns Creek at that point, and then realigning that roadway so we can reduce the grade. Right now, it's about a 14% grade from that road up to the concourse, and that's obviously really difficult for anybody who's mobility challenged. So we need to make that as ADA compliant as possible, which is a 5% grade, and that will take some realignment of that road. So that is one of the big projects, as well as finally getting our Windgrove entrance, which is incredibly needed at this point. So we're going to be moving forward with that design as well. The concept drawing for that does call for a signal at the Windgrove Nolensville intersection, which would be new for that area, but it will also create a safe way for people to cross over the greenway that is eventually going to be on the other side of Nolensville Pike from our property. So keep your fingers crossed. We've got our second reading next Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday at council.
Commissioner Avila, you looked like you had a question. No. No? Okay. Any other questions? Do you have mixed use?
I do not have mixed use, but I was out there again, like I said, I mentioned with a few folks from Market Street. They're making some great progress. I don't know if there's somebody here that wants to speak on their behalf, but if there are questions, I'll either take them down so I can get you answers or answer by, I know.
Yeah, I don't see anybody from Market Street here. We'll just move on unless somebody has a question.
Thank you all.
There will be no report from Market Street. We are going to move now to a Bristol Motor Speedway update, and I will call Mr. Kuhn up.
Do I need to press? There we go. Thank y'all. I'll be quick because I know we've got a work session dedicated just to this project later in the week, but I did want to provide an update as a follow-up to the update I provided last month on our neighborhood and community meetings that we've had. So since the last Fair Board meeting, we've had 4 community meetings. We've met with SNAP, the Chestnut Hill Neighbors Association, NIAC, and the Belmont Hillsborough neighbors just last night. In addition, going forward in the next couple of weeks, we have 3 scheduled with 12 South Neighborhood Association, Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Association, and a follow-up with the Belmont Hillsborough Neighborhood Association. So we continue to do those meetings, and we'll continue to do them throughout the duration of this consideration and project.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll just have one. Mr. Kuhn, thank you so much again for undertaking those community meetings. Do you guys have a mechanism, or have you thought through how to sort of take in that feedback and bring it back to sort of improve the deal for all parties, be it, a report out maybe here or another mechanism?
So I take notes at all these meetings, and we'll kind of summarize the thoughts that the neighbors had. And then a lot of the questions, it's just kind of a dialogue, a question and answer. And then a lot of the questions, since our last meeting, all of the FAQs have been posted on the Fair Board website. So I direct most of the neighbors to, if they have existing questions, to go view those FAQs on the Fair Board website, because those are pretty comprehensive and helpful. To the extent that there's things that aren't included in that, I have a running list and will correspond with the neighbors accordingly.
Thank you so much. And we will now move to community impact. And I am assuming NIAC's rep will be Mr. Bergeron.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The comments fit quite well to Commissioner Hartley's question. What is next? That was a simple question that was raised by a neighborhood resident at the recent SNAP group meeting that Matthew just spoke of a couple weeks ago. This resident, she asked, what would come next after this meeting? After a meeting where there was a couple hours of skepticism and opposition, but also a lot of real constructive feedback about real provisions and changes that the community thought were necessary as to Bristol's proposal. And this resident asked Matthew, what would Bristol just be checking the box? Would they just say, well, we had the meeting, our job is done? And, you know, at the time, there wasn't much of an answer to it. And we've similarly asked that in the NIAC meetings with Bristol. What's next? You know, what's coming after that? What's the tangible product from a lot of constructive, specific feedback that's being given? And so I'm wondering, you know, is that good enough for you, Fair Board? Is it good enough that they just held the meeting? You know, is it good enough to just have these public comment meetings where comments are limited to 2 minutes and there's not really a back and forth, a constructive dialogue about this proposal? And so, you know, I emailed you all last week and asked, can we have a working session with the community? We've had several with the supporters of this deal. I think the supporters of this deal have been very well represented in their support at these working sessions. Can we have one with neighborhood leaders? Based on some of the comments in the public hearing, can we have a working session with the local racers about how to protect local racing? Because this proposal right now doesn't really protect local racing either. I mean, from being taken away from them later. I think that'd be a great working session too, if you want to be fair. You should do both, sure. And talk about how to protect local racing as well. You know, a lot has happened over the last few weeks that has made that need for a back and forth dialogue a lot more clear. We know now that Mayor Cooper and his administration won't be here very much longer. You know, so at the moment they're pushing forward on a deal that their predecessors wanted no part of. And come October, they're gone, and they're going to sort of wash their hands of it. And, you know, in addition, I have to note that, you know, if the voters see fit, 2 of you commissioners will be on Metro Council very soon, and y'all won't be here either. And so, you know, who's going to be left behind for that implementation, that execution on this really risky proposal? Well, who's going to still be here is us, the community. We're going to be here fighting to hold Bristol accountable for all the promises that they're making verbally, but that they're not putting into the contracts. And it just doesn't have to be that way. And so again, I would just urge you all to change course and schedule some working sessions with some other groups. You know, the East Bank Stadium Committee did that. They held, when they had a session on community benefits, they had different viewpoints to talk and answer questions and had that dialogue. I think that'd be a great idea here. I do want to call your attention to one specific item that's come up at a number of community meetings recently, and it's included in the updated memo I recently submitted to y'all, and that's about penalties. You know, I think the community really, at a baseline, doesn't feel that there's enough community protections in this deal, but to start with. But there's also no true way to hold Bristol accountable for the few community protections that are currently there. Because the fact of the matter is, once this deal is approved, we're stuck with Bristol. We're stuck with them for as long as this deal is profitable for them, at which point, of course, Bristol will bail, but that's another problem. But if Bristol violates curfews, if they violate other protections, no Fair Board is going to be able to terminate the lease. They're not. I mean, you know, and we saw that problem with previous promoters when they violated curfew and the stakes were a lot lower. We didn't terminate it then either, but we also didn't have penalties then either. And so that's why the only way Bristol's going to be held accountable is if there are real penalties for them violating community protections. You know, I've done some looking into this, and it's my understanding that there's somebody who thought that penalties were a really good idea in the past. His name was James Weaver. It's my understanding that when James Weaver was on the Fair Board, he proposed penalties for the then Speedway promoter for violating curfews. I never thought I'd see the day, you know, that I would love an idea of James Weaver's, but it's Valentine's Day, so I love an idea that James Weaver had. It's amazing. I mean, that is magic. That's the magic of Valentine's Day right there. You know, there's so much left for you guys to do, with all due respect. You know, and there are fixes, and the dialogue and a back and forth can find those fixes to make the deal happen, not stop the deal, even though the community is overwhelmingly opposed to it. There are fixes here. And, you know, myself, NIAC, the community, we're waiting to have that dialogue. We're desperate to have that dialogue. We're feeling demoralized by the drumbeat of this proposal and the misinformation Bristol is spreading. And we'd love to have a back and forth on how to fix it. If you want to talk penalties right now, I'm right here. Let's talk about it. If you want to talk about any other item in those 12 things I submitted to you last week about reasonable fixes to make this deal better, let's talk about it right now. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Let's talk about it, I mean, whenever you want. Let's have a dialogue, guys. That's all we're asking for. Does anybody want to talk right now? Anybody want to talk about that? I'd love to. Okay, not right now, maybe later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And please excuse my departure. I have another commitment at 5:30. I just wanted to apologize for leaving immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move to new business, and we will do the fiscal.
Sorry, before we go into new business, there are a couple of things. One is I don't think we've received any kind of update from Nashville Soccer Club, and I know that soccer season starts before our next meeting. So, do we plan to have an update from them?
We will get with Ms. Kabara, and we will get a written update that will be distributed to all the members. For whatever reason, she's not here today.
Okay, because I know it's been a couple of meetings, but I had to go to the Sports Authority meeting to find out what they are planning for the year, which I don't understand. We're here meeting in their facility, and we don't have the courtesy. It's just like I found out at that meeting that there were going to be 2 concerts scheduled here in the facility, and while we're hearing concerns from neighbors about about noise, I think we should have been informed of these types of activities as well, because I'm pretty sure a Pink concert and a Shania Twain concert is going to generate as much noise as a soccer game that we, again, receive complaints about. And I think that that's one of the areas of transparency that causes concerns from the community members, is because we tend to deliberate on these types of agreements, but there is no enforcement. There is no mechanism for complete transparency as to the number and types of events that are being held on this property. And so I think if we're having these conversations about concerns of noise with Bristol that racing has, we need to hold them, the soccer club, to the same standards as well going forward. Yeah, sure.
Could I add one thing to that comment? Which
Yes.
Would it be possible to circulate, in addition to asking for a representative to come and give an overview, which I think is absolutely appropriate before their season? I completely agree, and I think that's a great idea, Commissioner Hendricks. Could we also just get a copy of the NSC lease? You probably sent it to me, or it may be available, but I'd love to just read it and see what the real enforcement penalties are and what the opportunities we have are in that document. I don't think that's obviously not everything. I think we should absolutely have them be here and talk to them and have a dialogue, but that was one more thing I think would be a good add.
Yeah, and there's a lease on the website, but it's not a signed lease, so we don't know if that's the actual final copy that everybody agreed to. And then I actually wanted to address some of the comments that were made, if I could, by the previous presenter. And it's only because I think, to be fair, it should be acknowledged that every meeting that we have, the public, everybody, every person of the public has the opportunity to make comments and to share their feelings. I don't know about you all, but I've received several emails from various members of the community who are for and against, that have made their suggestions to us or to me as a Fair Board member as to what they would like to see in the lease agreement. But I'm a little disturbed that we keep getting blamed for not having a open process when it's been a year that I have received the agreement that was made available to the public, and we have had at least 10 meetings as a fair board. We've had public hearings. We've had a public hearing, and we've had public work sessions that we did not limit who could speak at any of the meeting. Anyone could have made comment. So I just think that I just wanted to clear that for the record, and everyone that is here, that everyone has the opportunity to share your ideas. And you've shared your ideas, you've shared your concerns, and just trust that the way that this process, I know it may not be a clear process, but we have the opportunity to make amendments to the lease that I believe will be made available to the public once it is time to do so. So just don't think that we're listening or just sitting here listening, to your concerns and doing nothing about it. I think it's fair to say that we're trying to figure out how we all can play in this sandbox that belongs to everyone in the community, not just those who are for and not just for those who are against. What racing should look like. So again, I just want to reinforce that everyone has had the opportunity to express their concerns with us.
Commissioner Hendricks, that was the best Valentine's gift I could have gotten this year. Thank you. Commissioner Hartley.
I completely agree, Commissioner Hendricks, that I think we've constructed a good process. I don't think I'm completely satisfied with the speed of the process, as we've all expressed concerns about. One thing I would say, I agree that we've had a lot of opportunity for public comment. I do think it's something we should think about, is getting past that first level of I'm concerned about noise to the second level of let me take an hour that we're actually meeting with. And I see Brian Knock back there from TAG. I see Shay Sapp from what we said. I don't know that that's a misuse of our time to, we've had a lot of our experts come in on the deal who have various expertise, and I think they have a special expertise in what they expect out of their neighborhood. So I don't think it's a bad idea to have a session where we sort of brainstorm beyond that first level of a short comment. I definitely agree with you that we've offered a lot of public comment time, but I think sort of a set aside work session, or at least a portion of a work session where we could hear from those guys at more length is something that would be a valuable use of our time.
So let me respond to that. It's really difficult at this juncture to have a conversation specifically, and I'm going to use the example of noise, because I just finished my last conversation with Jack Wrightson and Laura today to try to get our proposal laid out the way it should be so that we make sure we protect the neighborhood. I can't present fluff to anybody until the fluff is baked and it's solid. And yes, I'm hungry, so I'm using food as a reference. But at the end of the day, there may very well be opportunity for us to present things like the noise proposal, things like the operating scheduling proposal. But until they're baked, there I go again, until they're baked, I'm not going to throw stuff out and see how much is going to stick on the wall. I'm not going to tell anybody that this is what the final product is when we're still working on it. I mean, Tom can sit there and shake his head, yes, that we're still working on it. And we want to make sure that the things that Jason brought up, his 12 points that he emailed last week, I went straight to work on them. But I'm not going to stand up and pronounce that these are the specific things I'm working on, because it's like a juggler. And how many plates can you juggle at one time and get everything right? So we'll be presenting to the community and to the Fair Board appropriately, but it will be comprehensive.
Oh, I'm certainly supportive of that, Chairperson Weiner, and I'm not suggesting any particular timeline. All I'm saying is, I mean, I think I'm in agreement with you. Like, once we get full sets of documents back and then we want to start a deliberative process at that time, that makes sense to me. We should look at what's presented in total. I mean, again, we got the documents with parts that clearly needed to still be negotiated because there were blanks in the document. So I know you guys are working on it. I think for me, I just don't want us to shortchange an opportunity to have that perspective incorporated. And it sounds like you're planning on that. So again, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I just would like to say, and I think Chairwoman Weiner, I think that's what I was trying to say was that I think some people may not agree with the process in which, and I think that's what the frustration is because you're no longer in the kitchen cooking. You know, you're having to watch it, and you may not understand all of the pieces that all the things that are happening there, and so you become frustrated, and you say that no one is communicating with you, no one is sharing. You know, when that's not the case. We heard you. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that when you see the final document, you will be in love with it, hopefully. Or not.
I mean, at the end of the day, we will be voting on a document that was the best that we thought we could make it. And at the end of the day, we will make a decision whether it's good enough to recommend to the council. And if we vote approval to recommend, then the council has their marching orders and they will have 21 votes. And that'll be their crack at it. And if we vote not to recommend approval based on the document that's provided, then they'll have to have 27 votes. So it's just the way the process is built. And in all the years that I've been in Metro government, I've never seen a project with 3 or 4 public hearings and 6 or 7 work sessions. It just doesn't happen, but it should. And that's why this process is playing out the way it is, because we're going to do it the right way. Okay, can we move to new business now? Fabulous. Let's go to the fiscal year 24 budget update. Director Womack, you going to do it or is
No, I'm
Therese?
deferring to our expert.
Expert.
So we are underway for the budget. We're in the budget season now, 2024, and we have presented a draft. I would say to the finance team regarding our new budget, but Director Womack is going to be presenting some fee changes for you guys to consider and to vote upon. So the information that we have already presented is subject to change given the vote. Right now, our revenue that we have presented to finance is 13% higher than what we have currently. So once you guys vote on the fee changes, we'll go back to the drawing board and see where we land. And then next board meeting, we will present the information to you all. So that's where we are.
Anybody have questions at this point? Commissioner Avila?
So the budget that you have drafted, 13% increase, already includes the changes which we are going to
No,
vote
sir.
on? No. Okay. It's a 13% increase without any changes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
Commissioner Hartley?
So Therese, was that 13% in increase in revenue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners wishing to speak? Okay, I'm going to turn the floor over to Director Womack to discuss our building rental and parking fee adjustments.
Okay, let's dive in here. We're going to start with venue rental rates. So when we moved down to the new buildings and opened in 2019, we set building rental rates. They have not been adjusted since that time. So we're going on 4 years now of no fee adjustments. Obviously, it did not make sense at all through COVID and recovering from the pandemic. However, we also are experiencing an increase in goods and services that we have to cover. Our utility rates have not decreased. In fact, they have increased, and we've had to build in those increases to pay our electric bill and our water bill and our gas bill, just like everybody does at home. So as those rates for goods and services increase, we have to look at certain ways in our budget to pay for those. I'll remind you that about this time last year, as we went through the budget process, and we were bringing online for the first time our divisional fair. There was a big discussion on how to cover that. That is a lot of our budget gap right now is bringing on a new program. But we had identified 6 points that we wanted to focus on this fiscal year to help reduce that gap. And I want to remind you of those because it feeds into this conversation that we're going to have right now about fees. One was vendor recruitment. As you can see by the numbers that we've presented, I think we've really kind of hit the ball out of the park on that one. We're doing really well, recognizing we have more to go to get back to those pre-pandemic levels. Recruitment of regional and national shows. I will tell you, I don't know what the percentage is, but of that 13% increase in revenue, 2 sources, flea market and corporate sales. Corporate sales is really booming. We've had more and more referrals and leads coming in. We just hosted a brand new event this past weekend, which was amazing, and they want to return. So, I mean, we're doing really well there. Certainly, we've launched the Nashville Fair. It was our first year, so we needed some time to evaluate revenue and expenses with that. We've made some adjustments to both of those from the fair perspective. In this budget, we do anticipate an increase in revenue and a decrease in expenses. And then determining a path forward for the Speedway. Obviously, we're in that process right now. One way or another, we have to determine a solid path forward for the Speedway. We also did a huge staff focus. We looked at our structure this last fiscal year. We also did some equity pay adjustments, not just internally, but you may remember that administration had proposed a minimum of $18 minimum wage for certain job classifications that we have at the fairgrounds, so we made adjustments accordingly. And then the last item was fees. So just like your home, we have 2 opportunities to reduce a budget gap, right? We can either reduce expenses or we can raise revenue. So we, of course, look at both. However, we have very few items in our budget that I would consider variable, things that maybe are not needed. We have to pay our electric bill. We have to pay utilities. We have a payroll that we have to meet. So there's very few line items that we can kind of rob from to reduce expenses. Certainly, we see a lot of energy efficiencies with our new building, with our new lighting, our modernized controls. That's all great, and we have seen a substantial reduction in utilities, but other things have gone up. Our cleaning chemicals have gone up, our supplies, paper products, all of those things have increased. So in looking at expenses, we are looking at reducing where we can on our expense line, but we have really no choice at this point is to look at what opportunities we have from a revenue perspective. We're doing really, really well in recruiting new business. So our calendar is filling up, which is great, but there are 2 areas specifically that I would like to have a discussion with you about today. And one is allowing, the ask is going to allow a kind of a fee policy for our rental rates is to authorize myself to adjust rental fees up to 5%. on an annual basis based on market and CPI without coming back every time to the Fair Board. Certainly anything above and beyond that, I do think that that kind of gets into the realm where I would want your input on, but up to 5%, looking at a modest 3% increase in building rental fees, and we are not talking the flea market right now. We are just talking building rental fees and space rental. A 3% increase will probably add about $20,000. It's not like a significant amount, but we do need to start looking at our rates and how they compare with market across Nashville.
Laura, let me ask you a quick question. I think you had shared with me earlier that you brought something to reflect square footage rates. Is that compared to what we're doing? So we have some comparables.
Yeah, I don't. So it's not always easy to find out what people are charging for their spaces because oftentimes they will do package deals. So, you know, really big convention centers and meeting spaces will do packages for room rentals. What are you bringing in food and beverage? Food and beverage service is a really big component in a lot of big conventions and banquets and meetings, so that you're not necessarily getting an accurate representation of the room space because you've got all these other factors that are built into an event. When we did our market rate analysis back in 2019, we were, of the data that we found, we were pretty much in line. We didn't want to increase our prices too much from when we were on the Hill because we wanted to be comparable, but it still was about a 10% increase from when we moved into the new buildings. So again, it's looking at just CPI, and I pulled this out for the southern region, you know, we're looking at almost 7% increase in the last year in the southern region from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we've not increased our prices. So again, looking at a modest increase, you know, for Expo 1, for, you know, $4,848, you're looking at going up to $4,993. So it's not a huge increase at a 3%. So that's why, again, we would be looking for the authority to be able to make those adjustments so that when budget time comes around year after year, we can do that analysis based on market, whatever data we can find on like facilities, and move forward.
So at this point, we need a floor on the floor so that we can have some more discussion about it. Do I hear a motion to allow the director to increase fees up to 5%, and we can actually add in there that it will be presented, the change in fees will be presented to the Fair Board at the time that those changes are made, just in the form of, you know, information, so we're aware of it.
And I kind of want to complicate it a little bit more.
Okay, hang on. I've got to have I need to have a second first.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. So we have the motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, so now we have it on the floor. Floor is open for discussion. Yes, Commissioner Hartley.
And I just wanted to clarify, I understood that to be a motion that would be year over year, not just
Yes.
for 1 year, year over year.
Yes. Ongoing. Commissioner Hendricks.
Can we include that some language around this taking place August 1st of each year, so that way it's not multiple times a year that it could change?
It would have to be annual, consistent with the Metro fiscal year, so it would have to start in July.
Okay.
So just to give you a little bit background, like Satrice said, so with this administration, draft budgets are due to finance in early February. So this is something that is very timely. We're looking 6 months in advance of an an effective date when we talk about these fees. So it wouldn't be something that would go into effect until the fiscal year, which is July 1st.
Yes, no, I was speaking of, so let's say you change it in July 1st and we give you the authority to change it up to 5%, then you can come back in October and say, hey, we're making some money, so I want to up it another 3%, without coming to, so
Got it.
something
Yeah.
that would just say that you can only do it annually, and consistent with,
I think the word annual would be the operative
okay.
here. Commissioner Hartley, are you right?
So I think just big picture, I'm supportive of this because I think Director Womack is the expert here in event sales. I mean, we obviously have other expertise, but she's empowered and drives this for event sales. This is part of our strategy to grow revenue. And if we really view this as a revenue generating facility, she needs to have wide discretion to be able to bring in events at market prices. So I would support this motion in a very broad manner. I think Commissioner Hendricks' suggestion is well taken, but I ultimately would feel very different. I think we should be very deferential to Director Womack's ability to sort of regulate pricing.
So let me ask, are you recommending that we remove the 5% cap or change the 5% cap?
No, I think it's fine as is. I just I'm giving color that I think I would trend towards trusting her ability to read the market better than my ability.
Okay.
But I'd love to hear, obviously, Commissioner Hendricks' thoughts.
Well, yeah.
Commissioner Hendricks, your turn.
Well, my thing is this is a Metro-owned facility, so people paying taxes already to utilize, to be, here, if they are Metro residents. So I'm thinking of from that standpoint, but then also a level of transparency, too. It's just that, because 1 month it could cost one, just like Nashville rent, if you, depending on the day of the week that you look, your rent price, the rent could be different. I don't want to create that type of atmosphere here, is that there's some consistency in the pricing, and people will be comfortable.
I will also add, because I know we have.
Not to say Laura, I'm just saying in the future, because we're saying that we're opening this up for the people in the future, right? so it's, who comes after her too, that it's,
No, I appreciate that. But I do want to also make a mention from our client's perspective, and we do have a client here, is they make plans almost a year out, 9-12 months out. So having this information in a timely manner and not having, tremendous fluctuations too close is not good for our clients. So, I'll give Christmas Village, they're already working on contracts for next November, this coming up November with their merchants, and our fees directly impact their contracting ability with their vendors. So we have to keep that in perspective and make sure that we are not surprising them, number one, and giving them adequate notice so that it's not a sudden change that they would have to absorb, because they can't, if they choose, pass that on to their vendors for their shows.
Commissioner Hartley, Commissioner Avila.
Yeah,
sorry.
just to reemphasize the importance of a cap. So I think as our vendors can also budget and expect, right, at worst, a 5% increase year over year, I think that's helpful. And just to clarify with Jasper's, Commissioner Hendricks' comment, I think it is important. We've had this conversation, Director Womack, about certain nonprofits that want to rent the space and ask for a discount, a nonprofit discount, right? I think that's the challenge that we're in. Is we're in a $2-point-something million deficit every year. We have to make sure that we understand that we have to, at a bare minimum, break even here. And so I think at least that we continue to discuss that this is Metro facility. At the same time, we're competing in a market where you have other facilities in the city that might be priced higher. I think it's a really interesting balancing act. And to Commissioner Hartley's point, we leave that to you to make those decisions. So I think I'm very comfortable with the 5% cap, the freedom for you to make those decisions because you're in the market every day. And I think at any point when and if that needs to change, increase for whatever matter. I think the importance of bringing that back and saying, hey, we got to be thoughtful about what kind of events we're holding that are not actually responding to the interests or the needs of our community. And so.
Any other commissioners wanting to speak? Okay, we need to reread the motion as written. Did you write it down?
I think I can, although correct me if I get this wrong. So as I understand it, the motion was for, to give the executive director discretion up to 5% to adjust the building rental and parking fees.
Just building rent.
Oh, just building rent, sorry. Up to 5% based on market research and CPI without having to go to the board.
And do it annually.
Annually. And do it annually, that is included?
Yeah, as long as we get annual in there. Okay, so we've already got the motion on the floor, so I just need to take a vote. Commissioner Owens,
Approve.
Commissioner Hartley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks,
Aye.
Commissioner Avila,
Aye.
and I am an aye, so it passes. And we'll move to the next topic, which is parking fees.
Okay, just a little background on parking fees. Went back and looked, I was trying to figure out when we implemented parking fees, and it was 2011. We did, that was the first time that I had seen movement from the board in implementing parking fee, which was set at $5 at that point in 2011. It's 2023, and we have not increased our base price for parking. I will say that there have been sporadic special events that we have charged more. For instance, we charged $10 for the fair. StarCast was a different rate. So it kind of depends on, you know, in discussions with the event promoter and what type of events coming in. But, you know, a vast majority of our events, including flea market, have been set at $5 for 12 years now. So I'm hoping that we can kind of consider moving forward what that rate should be. I did include for you in your packets just some market rates. I pulled these in June because we were anticipating having this discussion at some point this past June. I know it's been a while. But, you know, I was curious because, you know, as someone who has gone downtown, you know, I've paid $25 to park for an hour downtown. It's while we are not downtown, what I did try to present to you is just some benchmarking, looking at some of the fees that other event venues are charging, not necessarily just random like for-profit parking structures, but, you know, lots that service event venues in and around downtown. And then I tried to find, because I have seen parking lots in the Wedgwood, Houston area and other neighborhoods surrounding the fairgrounds. Seems like pretty much every vacant lot, they're putting up, you know, the kiosks for people to pay to park. I have found that, found them myself really close to the fairgrounds in Wedgwood, Houston. So some of those were a little bit harder to kind of determine what the hourly rate for those lots are, but I did find a couple, and they're on page 2 in that handout that I put in your packet. So I'm just really curious to have this discussion with the board at this point. And then certainly an increase in parking fees is a pretty dramatic impact to our revenue budget. So I wanted you to have those figures as well.
What is our current parking fee?
$5.
Well, that's any event.
She said, no, some events they charge more.
Yeah, there's a few events that we have charged more, but a vast majority has been the $5. And I will mention, because Mr. Treese brought this up today, we don't retain all that revenue. We have to pay taxes on the money that we collect for parking. So we're not collecting the full amount. We have to remit that to the state.
But if there's not an event, parking is free out here, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? So like, if I drove over here and
Just wanted to chill out and park? Yes,
no, not that.
that is correct.
I would change that part.
That is
if
correct.
somehow. I don't know how we could do it, but if we could change that part to make some revenue come to the fairgrounds, I would do that. But I don't know how often people do that, but I'm sure they probably do.
We certainly get, people who come in, who, want to walk the campus or just coming to visit, or they want to go to Fair Park, or they want to just walk around the state. Yes, we get people all the time, all day, that want to come in and just see the campus and walk around, and we certainly permit that. We don't regulate that.
Yet.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I would.
Because
Apparently,
that's
yeah.
a separate discussion, but I think one of those, like tonight, right? There's a lot of events happening downtown, right? As another opportunity to think about.
Yeah,
Right? Bus.
when the bus stop is finished.
Yep, right. So you have people that are coming in from other parts of the city to park on our site and go in and out to downtown. Just something to think about, because I think if that's one of the big drivers, right? Right, depending on our availability, we could be making a lot of money for, even if it's at $5, letting people park here and
Exactly.
then getting in and out. So just as a separate.
And I will add that I always advise my clients to capitalize on every opportunity and to get creative. So capitalize on opportunity and get creative. Commissioner Hartley.
Director Remek, which parking lots would be applicable? And I'm thinking specifically about Fair Park. Do we still have jurisdiction over that, even though it's sort of a metro park? I'm using air quotes because it may not be a metro park, but you control that?
Yes.
Okay. So we
Yes.
talk about the entire.
So any parking that we are monitoring or attending and helping to facilitate customers coming into the property for an event, we charge parking. So that could be any of the flat asphalt lots, it could be in the sheds, it could be in the speedway, it could be in Fair Park, all of those places that we can park cars, we will set up a parking attendant. Sometimes events are very small, if they're private events or they're not bringing in, like we may have events that are bringing in 3 buses. We're not gonna have pay a parking attendant out there to direct traffic and such. So, but that is a very small percentage of the events that we have, that we don't do that.
And your specific proposal from your email, you didn't say this yet, but just to get to the motion we need to make, is to phase parking from $5 today to $10 in a year or two?
I
Or
leave
you're
that
more
up,
looking for
I
our
leave that up
direction?
to this discussion. I really have that kind of open. Here, I understand and fully from, again, our client's perspective, because this impacts the customers that come to their show. So that is a really important thing to consider, and we understand that.
And is
because
there
then
a
they would
revenue
pay more.
share? There are times where we do have a revenue share with a vendor for parking.
It may be, but it's a very rare, it's a
Okay.
very specialized event that we may do that.
Yeah.
It's probably happened 2-3 times since I've been here.
So outside of the discussion for tonight, trying to spread some love here for the rest of our loved ones, do you need a decision? I think there's an interest in discussing opportunities and a need for discussion around increasing. What do we need to decide today? Because I don't know that we can come to an agreement today, maybe we can, on an actual price versus, yes, let's explore the options. Because to me, it's, thinking about last time I was at the Soho Club, it was $47. So these are wildly off.
Yeah.
Right? So I think to me is if we're gonna be talking about a proposal to increase prices, which I'm very interested in doing that. I think there's more work that needs to be done, and there's more discussion around what kinds of events. Like one event that I wouldn't want that to happen to is necessarily the fair, the flea market. So there are certain events that maybe we can protect or think about, but I think I would like us to know what exactly we want to do today. What decision point do we have to make today?
So I think in the interest of the budget that's upcoming and being able to manage those numbers, if we can drill down, we can always expand. We can always look at other opportunities and bring that to the table. But I think if we can set a minimum price, because clearly there are times that we're adjusting that price anyway, but if we can have a baseline price that we start from, because right now we're essentially $5. And if we can just look at how we want to fine tune that and not go into all the other tangents and just give them some direction for the budget and then look at other opportunities as they move forward, will that help?
It is. And, certainly from a cash handling and transactional point of view, dollars are easier to handle when you're bringing in a large volume of people. Imagine dollars in change. However, if it's more comfortable to phase in, I can certainly understand that, both from a customer perspective, a client perspective, but, our recommendation would be to go to $10.
Let me ask a real quick question, because that just brought up a point. Todd and I were looking at each other and going, cash, really? Can we facilitate a QR code through Stripe or somebody?
We have looked at that. That was Fence Hemmer's one of the things that we would talk a lot with Commissioner Hemmer when he was on the board is digitizing and going to remote payment options. And there's a couple issues with that. Number one is just technology, because you end up having, certain glitches. We did that for the fair and for ticketing, and for the most part, it was good, but we had some glitches with technology and getting, scanners and such. Second thing is credit card fees. There's always a processing fee that cards have that cash doesn't. So do you pass those fees on to the customer as well? And then not only are we paying taxes, but we're paying processing fees on top of that. So that was another consideration that we made. We've been cash for parking for 12 years. I will say that most everybody is used to coming to the fairgrounds with cash. Certainly if somebody does not and they're new, we have worked on the honor system, and that has worked out well. We're not going to deny anybody entrance because, they go in, get cash, and pay us on the way out.
So how many parking spaces do we control?
About 4,000 right now.
Commissioner
All
Hartley.
the lots, Fair Park, Speedway.
And then, do you think that there'll be a way to maybe offer some type of like parking package for a person who wants to have an event? Here, like they can maybe like buy out parking. Maybe you can guarantee or a certain number of parking spaces closest to the event.
We have done that for some events that want to do that for their customers. And that is something that we negotiate separately with the promoter if they don't want to pass that cost on to their customers.
Yeah. And then for soccer, I think you said, do we get the money? We get $5 for every event. Do we get money for soccer?
No. No, soccer keeps their parking money. They are, with the lease, they retain all their parking revenues.
As is the lease proposal with
How did
Speedway.
that pass? How did that get by? How did that get by? Who negotiated that?
Years ago, when they came here, that was
Which,
negotiated.
So,
So to me, again, I guess we could be here all night. I
y'all
think
cut into my day
I
job.
understand the budgeting timeline. My challenge is we've been sitting here and public comments on a lot of other things. This is one that, excuse my language, is going to bite us in the ass. We increase for August, right? And that's the proposal. When does this start?
It would be effective July 1 of 2024, or 2023, sorry, this next fiscal year. So
So
July.
at least we have time to communicate and let the community know what the change in the parking rates are. So that's clear, but it's not in 2 weeks when we have a flea market. I just want us to be thoughtful, that I understand for budgeting reasons. I'm really concerned about us making a 100% increase on parking without any additional dialogue with the community or amongst ourselves, unless there's a provision for some of the events that are more community-led events like the flea market. I'm just struggling with having to make a decision today about increased parking rates since 2011 that haven't increased since 2011 by August, personally. But that's why there's 5 of us, so we can think about.
Commissioner Hartley.
I think Commissioner Avila's onto something there. I mean, this is a large consideration. What's the downside of budgeting to the lower number? Is it just our delta in our revenue, our expenses will be larger? And what's the delta from 5 to 10 like in the budget? I mean, how much money is that?
What we have budgeted now for parking is $345,700. If we did a 100% increase, it'd be $690.
So it's $350,000 we're talking about. I mean, I kind of agree that it's a little bit of a short discussion period for a large change. I'm also more interested actually in looking at potentially modernizing our parking program. Maybe talking to Music City Center and thinking about, obviously they have a totally different facility, but they've got obviously cashless payments and things like that. So, I mean, if it's like, I just feel like we may not have had a sufficient amount of time to discuss it. Perhaps I could be supportive of like, you have the authority up to $10, but it's at your discretion, which would then give us a little more room to sell into the community. We may have some events that it's not appropriate, but that's my sort of general thinking right now.
And Commissioner Hartley, it sounds like you already have that flexibility in charging more.
We have,
That's what I was
yes, we have in the past, although it's very, very limited and it's in cooperation with the promoter. This really is the base fee. And I think a lot of people do look for the flea market as being one of those because it's our one self-produced event. Of what that increase would be. And you're right, there is a lot of impacts. There's impacts to our clients, which I understand. They're probably very concerned. We have talked, Sherry and I have talked to several of our promoters, long-term promoters, who I think they understand, but also know that that is an impact to their customers and how that would impact, people coming to their events. So it's not a decision to take lightly. But if, at a minimum, if you're not comfortable with making a decision today, give me some feedback on what I can provide you so that we can continue moving forward and at least let me get you the information that you would need to potentially take this up at a future date.
So just to be clear, so we're going to increase, we're looking at increasing the amount that a person would pay us to be a vendor, but then we're going to also make more money off of their parking their people. Like, right. So then we have the opportunity, instead of making $5,000, if the person uses 1,000 parking spaces, that's $5,000 more that we didn't, that we could expect in return making off of this one particular event.
Some of our fees come from our clients who rent from us. Others are users, their customers, which is generally the parking.
Commissioner Hartley, and then I've got a question for Satrice for some clarity.
I wanted to add to my last comment, and again, I think I kind of think out loud in case y'all didn't know, in case you hadn't noticed yet, which is fine. But I'm also generally supportive of increasing the parking rates. I think it's low. I just think I support Mario's point that perhaps we need more time to consider it. But I do think it's low, even for government-produced events or metro-owned facility. I still think it's a low bottom rate. So I just wanted to add that. I think it's the right approach. I just might need more time to consider the ramifications.
Commissioner Owens.
I think Commissioner Hendricks has asked this in the past, but like on the 25th, when we had the flea market here and there's a soccer match, who has control of the parking then?
We split. So usually we would do it in the mornings and they take it over at night because their games are at 7:30.
But this
So
one on the
there are-
25th is at 3:30.
Yeah, so they have, this has also happened with when we did, I'll give you an example, Jingle Beats, when we had the Christmas show, we would combine and have parking attendants for both to make sure that our event attendees were getting in to the space that they needed to get into and the lots that they needed to get into for that $5 price.
Is that so?
So we work together with our campus partners to make that work.
Wow.
Because, you know, to your point, soccer does not charge $5 for parking.
No, they don't. And they don't pay us anything either.
Well, and just to look at the elephant in the room, I mean, we're talking about doing that. This is going to be a further consideration because for significant event weeks under the raceway proposal, we're looking at a similar parking split. So your point is really well taken that we need to evaluate if we give away all the parking to our most significant events. This actually may not matter very much to the budget because the only events that we will benefit from will be relatively small. And so the delta won't actually close that much. Though I think it will hit the 350. Obviously, you've counted for that.
So, Therese, let me ask you a quick question. Can you, off the top of your head, give us a percentage of increase of our expenses over last year? Can you send that to us? I think that would help to inform our decision in terms of how much of our expenses have increased that we need to compensate for.
And don't forget that fair is a whole new input into this in this current fiscal year that was very, very different. So when you see our numbers, it's not necessarily going to be apples to apples because purchase services, for instance, is way more utilized for the fair than it is for our general operations. So it's going to be a little bit, that's a huge piece of our expenses is this new input, which is the fair.
Let's look at things that are ongoing like utilities instead of purchase services for the fair. Let's maybe get together offline and come up with the things that we want to look at to identify that trend of things that are more indirect expenses.
Is what's going on in the background, and I'm sorry, I don't know Metro budgeting that well, but like essentially you have to probably pencil your budget and then you're essentially trying to close that revenue gap so then you can show what you need from the general funds. And so if we show more revenue, we won't have to have that obligation. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're all going to probably agree to raise parking. I do understand the budget challenge you have now, but I think Commissioner Avila has a good point, which is this is more weighty than a lot of things to the community. So
Let me, I guess, just inform a little bit. When the budget goes to council and the council members are meeting with the different directors of the different departments, one of the questions that invariably at budget comes up is, why don't you raise your fees if your fees are not high enough and taxpayer money is having to go in to supplement the shortfalls? And so when we have users that are getting a deal on their parking, for example, the taxpayers are essentially having to supplement that in the compensation that they give us from mid-year supplementals or even in the annual budget, knowing that we're going to have a shortfall because we're not making our numbers, which is the reason that they wanted to bring this up now so that we could help address at least some of it and mitigate some of the impact on the taxpayers.
And I appreciate that. It's just, to me, it's a hard decision to make today to get the budget.
But I think that we can, I mean, since people have already been doing it already, I think in order to make it right, I think maybe a motion on allowing the director to be able to charge up to $10, for parking, because in that way they can work on their budget, and then we can.
Would you
And I wouldn't
please make
even
that
limit-
motion and we'll get a
And
second
I
on
wouldn't
the
even,
floor.
can I say, like, why are we limiting it at 10?
Well, until we could go back and talk to.
I mean, why limit it at 10 in
The
terms
people.
of either a floor or a ceiling, right? Well, let's say when you're looking at the market, why should we limit it to 10 if it's an event that, if soccer's charging 30, why shouldn't we charge 30 for a similar event? If the customer is willing to pay that much, the director should be able to set prices and be dynamic pricing based on an event.
I mean, only because I live downtown and that parking. It's just,
I know
Like,
that,
it
but
is not the thing.
it should be
That is
her
not the
discretion to look at the market
But
and
I don't
say,
think I also think that we shouldn't be like looking at opportunities to make more money off of people. Like in this instance, I mean, I understand we're a business and everything, but you're saying if someone pays $300 for a soccer ticket, then go ahead and just beat them on the head and charge them more for parking because they just paid $300 for a soccer ticket. Like, I don't think that's the way that we should.
yeah, so
look at it.
what I think is,
But-
what we're saying in the proposal, are we saying that it's a minimum of 10, or are we gonna put a cap on the amount that the director can decide? I think we should put some guardrails around it. We say we give her the ability to charge up to, or are we, because we say 10, what does that mean? Are we saying that that's the cap?
Yeah,
So hang on a minute, guys. Hang on a second. Hang on. We're going to go round and round. I just want to take a second for Satrice to share some information with us, and then we'll open the dialogue back up.
So I just want to remind the board members that we are revenue generating, that our job is to meet our expenses. So if we have a $4 million budget, we have to make $4 million. Like, we're not like a lot of the general fund departments where the money is put into their budget and they're just to stay within their budget. That's not the case for us. We have to make the money in order to produce what we do. If we don't make the money, then as as Chair has said, we have to go then to the taxpayer and say, we need $1.6 million because we didn't make our budget.
Yeah, and that's totally understood. And but we also need to be able to say that it is accessible and affordable so that people will come here. Because if we make it out of reach for people, then we're going to be sitting there looking at facilities that we've just built that are empty because nobody can afford to come. So while we're thinking about the standpoint of being fiduciary responsible, for the operations here, we also have to understand that we need to have a place that is welcoming to everyone, no matter what your income bracket may be. And especially if we're not getting money from soccer parking, and if we're not going to be getting money from speedway parking, but we're going to pass it on to the average citizen, to make up for our short-sightedness in giving away our parking.
So
Commissioner Hartley.
I think we should look at this decision point similar to the one we just decided about increasing the rents to promoters. I mean, this is the exact same thing to me in some ways, where I think we give Director Womack some amount of discretion. I think I could be supportive of an up to $10, where then we can pencil that $700,000 in revenue. And I think what we would ask for you then, Director Womack, is to do some additional research and a more fulsome proposal of the impact of increased parking on community uses. Because I think Commissioner Hendrick's point is well taken, that this could be disruptive and make this out of reach for some people. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's the case or not, but I think we should do the research to see that. So I would be supportive of up to $10 as long as it's tied to Director Womack coming back with a larger proposal. And I might also ask you to explore some of the modernizing in parking that I also mentioned.
He sounds like Commissioner Hemmer again.
Hey, guys, cash will not exist much longer, so we should be thinking ahead. That's I would be supportive of that.
And that could be some money that we're missing as well, because people may not have cash. But how much are we losing by not on the days that we don't charge for parking? Because that may be some of the fixes that may be needed in order so we can meet some revenue projections.
Are we talking about like soccer contracts?
Or not just soccer, or whoever else.
We cannot,
I think
we
it's only, I
cannot
think the only
alter
one
those
we don't
contracts.
lose, where we lose money is on soccer.
Yes, I mean, occasionally we'll have, if there's really large events, say downtown, like, for instance, we have been contacted by staff at Nissan saying, hey, for this event, we may need some supplementary parking. We will enter into a separate agreement with them to provide overflow parking, but that is more of a rental agreement, a contract with that agency. We don't see a lot of people, we're not traditionally used as a park and ride. Like, hey, I'm going to go park at the fairgrounds and grab an Uber downtown. That doesn't happen very much that we have seen. And then you also have to take into consideration, we do have Fair Park and a dog park. What does that mean for the people who come and just want to walk around the campus, who want to be able to recreate, take their dog to the dog park? Is that subject to a fee? And I'll add just one more thing is that, I think we have been given some grace over the last couple of years by Metro. Cetrice is very right in reminding everyone that we are an enterprise fund and our revenues and expenses need to match. They haven't, and there's been a lot of reasons. We've had, massive construction. We've had a pandemic. We've had the introduction of a brand new program with the fair. So we've had a lot of interesting things happen, which are great, but it has created these deficits. And so while that has been understood by this administration and they have given us grace in our budget and have provided us the supplementary funding that we need, I don't think that's necessarily a long-term fix that we can always rely on Metro to bail us out when we can't make our revenue. So, it's always a piece that is difficult because that it is passed on to our clients and their customers. So it's not done lightly. I don't want you to think that you need to make a rash decision. This is why we wanted to bring it up, so that we could talk about it as a group, so I could kind of understand where your concerns were to see if we can address those. But also understanding the real impact of where we are budgetarily and what what our expenses are. And I'm sure you can appreciate, our desire to close that gap and not have to go to Metro and saying we need a, $1.6 million subsidy year after year.
Also, I think that there are other ways, if we want to talk about being creative in meeting some of our revenue goals. So like the fair, what are we looking at for sponsors, for the fair? I know that there wasn't much effort last year to get sponsors. There were some that came through, but it got started late, and so we missed the huge time frame of when corporations are looking at doing dollars. Like, what is the plan for this year? To do that instead of, again, there's another way from passing the buck on to, the resident who wants to come out here and have a good time. So there are other ways to meet our obligations and not having to run to, Daddy Warbucks Metro and, who was just cash poor just a couple of years ago. But, so I'm just saying that, like, I'm offering, like, thinking outside of the box. Have we gone to some of those corporations, to look at sponsoring the fair and some of our other activities, here, some of our companies that are moving here that want to be good partners, to the, fair. How we looking at, like last year, I think it was an Amazon helped us with a 615 stage. That was a small commitment, but have we gone back to them to say, hey, thank you for your X amount of dollars last year. Can we count on you this year for, 3 times as much?
Yes, we have. And, that is one of the challenges that we faced last year. We didn't get our funding for the fair until the budget season. Our new fiscal year started. That was July. We had to put on the fair in September. So it didn't really give us a lot of time to do some advanced work. But we're ahead of the game this year, and I think we're going to get better and better at that by identifying those. But to your point, yes, we have. And, that is something that I think is a real opportunity to look at sponsorships and kind of help offset some of the expenses in talent and premiums and things that we do for the fair. That is really the nature of the fair, which is, that education and bringing the community to the fairgrounds.
Anybody else have a comment before?
Yes,
Commissioner Arroyo.
I just want to reiterate that and clarify. So we're saying a cap of $10, but we've charged more than $10 for certain events. So that's what I want us to consider is we have charged more than $10, so I don't know why we're limiting ourselves to 10 if we're saying that we believe in our director. She's in the market. She should be flexible in making decisions as to how much money to charge per event. My assumption is, given our calendar, we know what our big events are. We should be able to put that into the pro forma and say, just for ease, starting July 1st, flea market increases to 10, certain events like Christmas Village is 15. Like, what is it that we could really do, right? So I think that's one of those things that we have to really think about. And if we had flea market vendors would say the same thing to 10. So I think that's where we have to be really careful about it. And so I'm okay if we're going to say cap to 10, but if we're already going outside of 10, then we really have to tighten this freedom for the director to make that decision.
Commissioner Hartley.
I guess
And then
from-
we're going to have a motion on the floor, and then we'll reopen it because we've got to move in a direction.
I guess for me, I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Adelaide. I guess what I'm saying is sort of like a compromise. They need to show $10 to pencil the revenue. And so there's no reason we can't put up to 10, and there's no reason we can't say Director Womack can come back with any exceptions she wants to. And I think that addresses Commissioner Hendrick's point about we don't want to make it inaccessible, so we're keeping a cap in there and directing Director Womack to sort of not overcharge. So, I mean, I think that's just the compromise that would work for me.
Okay, I'm going to allow Director Womack to
Just
have
one more thing. The only thing I would open up for just discussion is just inconsistency between events. That could pose a challenge when, hey, your event's going to be 5, yours is going to be 10. I know that we have done that on a very limited, but I get it. No, I get it. And I just open that up to just general discussion.
I don't know what you're asking for at the end of the day. Like, I don't know. I think we need more direction on the direction.
Well, what's the highest amount you charge for parking?
$20. That was StarCast this past July.
How many people park?
I don't know off the top of my head. And that was a parking share. So that was something that we retained $12. And so it was a split. So that was $12 to the fairgrounds.
How many of these splits do we have?
Not very many. It's a rare package depending on the event.
Well, so we yeah. So
Okay, so I am going to entertain a motion that we authorize Director Womack to set parking fees, period.
So Madam Chair,
Now, hang on. As a matter of Robert's rules, you have a motion on the floor
I
that
second
needs
that.
thank you, and it has a second. We will open the floor for discussion. If anyone wants to consider amending the motion, we can do that. But we have to have a direction because we're going in circles. Commissioner Hendricks, your turn.
Well, Madam Chair, I would move that we would cap the price at $20.
So you want to amend the motion that she has the authority up to $20 per car, right?
Correct.
Wrong, okay.
Director Womack can set parking up to 20 is the amendment, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I will accept the motion as amended. So I need to hear,
I would like to amend the motion as well.
okay, we're going to take one at a time. Okay, and the way that works is I need a second for his request to amend.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of his request to amend, we'll take an aye vote. Commissioner Owens.
Saying $20 cap, but so if you did that like that split share, then we could do $28 because 20 would come to us and 8 would go to them. Yes, because if we're setting the 20, because we never got 20, so we got to set it to our 20.
Correct.
All right, so that means you could go to a split share of $28 or $30 or $25. As long as we get 20, I'm just saying that 20 comes to us.
So the revenue per parking site would be maximum $20 that the Fair Board would receive. So, do I have a vote on the amendment? Commissioner Hartley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks, Commissioner Aguilar.
I know. I was
Aye.
looking at.
Okay, we now have the motion on the floor as amended. I'm going to open the floor for a brief discussion, and then we will vote on the bill as amended. He did.
I
I'm
don't want to
waiting.
make an amendment. I don't think this needs to be part of the direction to Director Womack in the motion, but I do want to see a parking study. I want to see a comprehensive strategy to maximize our parking revenues while still contemplating making it affordable to the community. And I think that needs to be presented with giving us more than one day to consider it. I do think this is a prudent course of action to close our revenue gap, but I do think we need to spend more time on this, and I would ask you to put that together.
Can I add a date when we want that? Right? Do we want it prior to July 1st? Right? I think at some point, some sort of proposal, whether we have to get an outside advice, I think we just want to be able to see that at some point
I want
before
us
the
to
end.
get past budget,
Yeah.
and because they have so much on their plate right now, so can we maybe say May?
I honestly think we can, I don't even think we need to put a timeline. I think Director Womack always comes back to us. So I would just say as soon as you can get it. But if you're not comfortable with that, we could say
I'm
summer.
fine with it as long as it's not a day before we have to make a decision. So I just want to make sure that this happens so that whether, my term ends in April, so I might not be here. And so if that's the case, I believe that's April, then we have to make that decision. And so I just want to make sure that we have some sort of timeline. So she knows, right, that she has time, but we do want to see a real proposal on the opportunity for us to maximize this asset that we have, which is parking. So
Okay, we're going to take a vote. Would you please read our bill?
Okay. So I think the motion is for the executive director to have discretion to set the parking fees per space of up to $20, or it can be more than $20 if there is a parking split, but it cannot, the share that can go to the Fair Board can be no more than $20. And if there are additional exceptions to that, the executive director could come back to the Fair Board to request special exceptions.
Commissioner Owens.
Aye.
Commissioner Hartley.
Aye.
Commissioner Hendricks.
Aye.
Commissioner Avila.
Aye.
And I am an aye. Motion passes.
Look at us.
Given that there is no more business, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I do have one thing I wanted to raise for new business, and it's very brief. And I promise it's very brief. Earlier, Mr. Smiley pointed out this issue about the back pit and tunnel, which I am completely unfamiliar with this, but it seems to suggest that we have some type of potential breach in our contract. So I would just ask Metro Legal, I would like to request that Metro Legal give us an analysis of the materials that Mr. Smiley presented. He's still here. I'm sure he would like to talk to you. Thank you so much to our new legal counsel. I think that's something that would be prudent for us to have. And then I have one more, assuming you're good with that.
I'm fine with that.
And I love y'all, and I don't want to open a can of worms. I emailed you. I don't know what the schedule is for the next 2 weeks, and I'm trying to plan. Can we get just like an outline of the topics? I have a kids basketball game. I'm going to skip it if it's important, but I don't know what we're doing. So I would love to get it, and you can email it to me, Laura, if you'd like. But I just been trying to plan.
So I will send you the agendas. They are posted for both Thursday's meeting and the public hearing on Monday, which is at 50 Forward. We've got full venue event on Monday, so we couldn't host it at the Fairgrounds, so it's at 50 Forward, trying to keep it as close to campus as possible. The 23rd is on your schedule as a Fair Board meeting that will be turned into a work session so that we can continue to get through, hopefully, the requested information from the Speedway assessment that we talked about in the last work session, as well as hopefully resolve to some of the issues that we talked about earlier that Chair mentioned for sound mitigation and scheduling.
Do you think you'll have that? And the reason I'm asking is it's my son's last basketball game on that Thursday, and if we're not looking at sound mitigation and scheduling, I'm gonna ditch you guys and go to the game. And I'm not trying to be mean. I would rather go to that.
We totally get it.
So perhaps we could get like an update as soon as you have it, so that we'll know that I can tell them.
Yes, the only thing I think waiting for is a little bit more information from the consultant that we talked to at the last work session of what his timing is going to be.
Well, and we can go one step further, and as we receive those documents and have them baked and ready, we can let you guys know.
For the public hearing on the 20th. The public hearing that's on the 20th. Where's that going to be?
50 Forward.
Do we have, do you think enough notices?
It was posted last week. So there was like 10 days.
And will there be an opportunity for like maybe some of the amendments or things that we've like suggested be available before then, so that people will have time to take a look at it? Maybe that public input could be something different than what we've already heard.
So you're saying that you want to present amendments to the community that have not been vetted by Metro Legal or Bristol? That won't happen. We can't put anything out there that hadn't been vetted and discussed by them. We can present it from us, from you directly to them. But to put it out in the public space when we don't know if it's going to be something that is either legal or can make it into the contract, I don't think that's a good idea at all.
No, I'm saying, can it be done before then? I mean, so we can have something different to talk about. Because if not, I think we're going to be sitting there for 2 hours listening to the same conversations because nobody has anything new. We're not sharing anything, We're not sharing anything.
Oh, you're saying that the updated documents will be out before that public hearing in time for people to see it.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a good segue, Commissioner Weiner. So I have some suggested ideas as well that will probably be reflected in those documents. So we're going to have work session on Thursday. We're going to have a public hearing on the following Monday, which will also be absent from. Apologies, I had a conflict that day. We'll have a work session the following Thursday, at which point we expect at that work session we will have updated scheduling declaration and noise mitigation documents. I'm wanting to look at those before then presenting amendments. Is that right? Is that the schedule?
I'm going to make a suggestion. If you have amendments that you're thinking about now, go ahead and get them to Laura, because we're working with them directly in the coming days.
Yeah.
And I would like as much information, opinion, thoughts on the table as possible.
Sure.
And that way, it's better if we're all sitting at the table and we've got it sitting right there.
Right.
And we can get it baked in if at all possible.
Okay.
When I have everybody at the table. And that way, there's not a lot of back and forth. And you may have a great idea that we haven't quite frankly thought of. So go ahead and get it to Laura so that we can have it.
I'm open to that. I guess the challenge I have is that some of my ideas are dependent on the scheduling and noise mitigation. So just understand that I may reserve the right to have further amendments because I don't obviously know what those agreements are yet.
Right.
And I'm sure Commissioner Hendricks probably is in a similar boat.
Yep. And I get it. It is a hard circumstance for us to have to work in because we can't sit down and talk to each other. And it's tough.
Thank you for the overview of the schedule, and we'll plan to be there as much as we can.
We need to go because y'all gonna have me sleeping on the couch. So let's hurry up.
All right, Madam Chair, I
Move to adjourn.
That we move. That we
Yes.
adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second? I knew there would
I
be.
second. Okay.
Commissioner Owens,
I approve. Whatever you're doing, adjourn. Whatever.
Commissioner Hartley,
Aye, thank you.
Commissioner Hendricks,
Aye.
Commissioner Avila.
Aye.
We're out of here.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.